I stood there frozen, the porch light buzzing above me as her hand tightened on the door. "You want in?" she said. "Then beg." The lock clicked before I could answer. Through the window, I saw my own daughter laughing, my chair already filled by someone else. The night air bit at my throat, but I didn't knock again. I just turned, walked back to my car, and started rewriting my will. We're about to begin, but if you'd like, share where you're joining from. It reminds me this story doesn't echo into silence. It lands somewhere real. Drop it in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe. The fall air in upstate New York was crisp, bright, and biting. One of those picture-perfect October Saturdays that made suburban porches glow gold, and every pumpkin spice candle smell like a promise. Daniel and Renee's colonial-style home stood at the top of a modest hill, its clean shutters and tasteful front lawn decorations arranged like a catalog spread. But the warmth outside didn't reach the people inside. The doorbell rang once. Sharp, definitive. A silence fell over the foyer, the kind that wraps around a room like static before a thunderclap. Renee was the first to move. She glided down the stairs in heels that clicked like punctuation, wineglass in hand. She didn't ask who it was. She already knew. Daniel trailed behind her slowly, adjusting the cuff of his button-down like it was more complicated than it was. His jaw was tight. He said nothing. When Renee pulled open the front door, the hush inside the house became absolute. Even the music, some harmless Spotify playlist humming from a corner speaker, seemed to dull. Agnes stood on the porch, wearing a deep blue cardigan and holding a bottle of red wine wrapped in a linen ribbon. Her smile was polite, not warm. Her eyes scanned past Renee, looking for Daniel. Before she could step forward, Renee stepped fully into the frame of the doorway. "Forgot something?" Renee asked, voice low and amused. Agnes kept her smile in place. "I was invited." Renee tilted her head. "Were you, though?" From the living room, guests leaned in slightly, holding their wine glasses still. Cousins, former co-workers, one woman from Daniel's office. Nobody close enough to intervene, but all close enough to enjoy the show. Then, in a voice both sugar-slick and sharp enough to cut flesh, Renee said, "You want in? Then beg." A beat of stunned silence. Daniel looked down, rubbing the bridge of his nose. He didn't move, didn't speak, didn't defend. Maya, standing near the hallway arch with her phone held waist level, quietly tapped the record button. No one noticed. Or if they did, no one cared enough to stop her. Agnes blinked once. Her expression didn't change. She looked from Renee to Daniel, just long enough to register his silence, then back to Renee. "I see," she said softly. And then she turned. No fury, no last word theatrics. She stepped off the porch and walked down the path like she was headed somewhere better. The bottle of wine stayed tucked in the crook of her arm. She never looked back. Inside, someone coughed awkwardly. Renee, still in the doorway, raised her glass and muttered, "Cheers." The door clicked shut behind her. Later that night, in the quieter corners of the house, the storm began to ripple. Maya found Agnes leaning against her car in the driveway, keys in hand but not leaving. "You okay?" Agnes smiled faintly. This wasn't unexpected. "She showed you the first draft of her character," Maya said, her voice low. "You believe people when they tell you who they are, right?" Agnes exhaled. "I do now." The next morning, Agnes stood in her small but orderly kitchen. Sunlight streaked through the window blinds, striping the countertop in sharp lines. Her hands moved with calm precision as she pulled open the drawer beneath the coffee maker. Amid pens, old receipts, and a half-used roll of Scotch tape, sat a single bright orange folder. The label on it, handwritten in block letters, read, "Gifts and Loans." She laid it flat on the counter. Her reflection stared back at her in the steel of the coffee pot, calm, calculating, utterly changed. She opened the folder. Inside, receipts, checks, bank statements, screenshots, names, amounts, Venmo logs. A printed-out email with Daniel's signature. A Christmas card Renee once sent with a post-it note. "Thanks for covering the lawyer's retainer. We'll pay you back once the house closes. Promise." Agnes stared at that one for a while. The edges were creased from how often she'd looked at it. Not out of sentiment, Not anymore. She picked up her phone, swiped to Maya's contact, and typed, "Keep that video safe. Don't send it anywhere yet." Then she added a second text. "But get ready." The fluorescent lights above the teller stations buzzed with the kind of sterile detachment Agnes had come to associate with hospitals and DMV offices. Still, the bank smelled faintly like citrus cleaner and paper dust. Clean, controlled, just the way she liked it. She waited until the lunch rush had thinned, then stepped forward when the young man behind the counter waved her over. His nameplate read Joel, and he looked barely old enough to rent a car. "I need copies of my transaction history," she said calmly. "Checking and savings. Last 6 months." Joel blinked, fingers already moving toward his keyboard. "Sure thing, just deposits or—" "All of it," she said. "Itemized, with check images." He glanced up. "That might take a minute. I'll wait." As he clicked and tapped, Agnes looked past him to the rows of cubicles behind glass. A woman in a navy blazer sat in one, mid-conversation with a customer. A security guard near the entrance shifted his weight but didn't look twice at her. No one did. She could have been anyone, an ex-wife, a teacher, a real estate agent. And that anonymity suited her just fine. 10 minutes later, Joel returned with a sheaf of papers, fresh from the printer. He set them in front of her, fanned them slightly. "Is this okay?" She leaned in, scanning page by page. At first, routine charges, grocery stores, electric bill, gas stations. Then, she froze. 1203. Withdrawal, $4,200. Memo, D. Carter Consulting, LLC, 0118. AC debit, 95733. Memo, R. Carter, supplies. She flipped to the next page. More charges labeled Carter, others routed through a shell account with a matching last name. Her lips tightened. "I'd like these certified," she said, looking up. "Stamped and initialed." "As soon as possible." Joel hesitated, uncertain. "Let me grab a manager." 10 minutes later, Agnes sat in a small office with a branch supervisor named Margie, a short woman with smart glasses and the kind of practiced, almost motherly tone banks reserve for the concerned client file. "We'll need to file an internal audit for these transfers," Margie explained, turning the printout slowly. "Anytime business funds are being routed to personal accounts, especially with unfamiliar designations, we're required to flag and review." "Good," Agnes said. "Do that." Margie tilted her head, intrigued but too professional to ask why. "Would you like a call if we find anything?" "No, I'll be following up myself." By the time Agnes left, the account was officially flagged for review, and she carried 2 certified sets of documents in her handbag. She didn't go home immediately. Instead, she drove across town to Inez's duplex. Inez didn't ask questions when Agnes walked in with the folders and a blank manila binder. She simply pushed aside a half-finished puzzle on the dining table and opened a fresh stapler. Agnes laid the documents out in neat columns, transactions on the left, notes on the right. "Index by date?" Inez asked, already counting sheets. "Yes, and highlight anything labeled R. Carter." "That's not his supplier, it's her." As they worked in quiet tandem, the tension shifted. No longer sharp with humiliation, but focused. Surgical. Agnes moved with efficiency, muscle memory from years of clerical work guiding her through the rhythm: staple, label, slide. The folder grew heavier with every entry. Inez flipped a page. "These look like payroll withdrawals. Did she get herself on his business account?" Agnes didn't answer. She didn't have to. The numbers were already writing the story for them. Her phone buzzed. A message from Maya. "Here. Thought you'd want the time-stamped version." Attached. A high-resolution screenshot of Renee, arm braced across the doorway, mouth mid-sneer. Just behind her, Daniel stood half-turned, his face caught in the perfect moment of calculated silence. Agnes saved it to her case folder and exhaled, slowly. Then she picked up her black ledger from the tote bag, opened to a blank page, and began writing in clean, slanted print. "Transfer 101478, Deck 3, D. Carter, LLC, $4,200 transfer 111911, Jan 18, R. Carter, supplies, 95733, and so on, line by line. Evidence becoming architecture, receipts becoming nails." When she reached the last entry, she paused. then turned to a fresh page and in all caps wrote, Door video, Deck 9, 6:41 p.m., recorded by M. Wallace. She underlined it once, then again. Outside the window, a crow landed on the fence post, black eyes blinking toward the glass. Agnes looked up at it, then down at her growing pile of records. She didn't speak. But her silence this time meant something entirely new. Monday morning brought a dull drizzle that clung to Agnes's windshield like regret. Thin, cloying, impossible to wipe clean. She sat in her car outside her house, engine idling, phone pressed to her ear as she listened to elevator music and the occasional, "Your call is important to us." When the voice finally came on, real, crisp, and far too chipper for 8:42 a.m., Agnes straightened in her seat. "Good morning, Madison Life and Property," the woman said. "How may I assist you today?" "I need certified copies of all recent changes to my joint policies," Agnes said evenly. "Home, auto, and life, for the file listed under Agnes Holloway and Daniel Holloway. Of course. One moment while I pull up your account." Agnes rolled the window down half an inch. The air smelled like wet pavement and something faintly metallic. "Okay, got it," the woman chirped. "So, it looks like several updates were made back in August. Would you like me to email the policy packet?" "No," Agnes said. "Certified hard copies. Sent to my home address. I'll also need a confirmation of who initiated the changes." A pause, longer than it should have been. "That might take a bit longer. I'll need to escalate that request to our compliance team." "Do it," Agnes said. Another pause, then a forced smile through the line. "You'll receive a call within 48 hours. I'll expect it in 24. She hung up without saying goodbye. Later that afternoon, the policy packet arrived via secure email anyway, likely a nervous assistant trying to get ahead of the formal mail delay. Agnes opened the file on her laptop with Inez looking over her shoulder, chewing on the stem of her glasses. The documents loaded slowly, each PDF page sliding in like an accusation. Agnes's name was still listed on the policies, but something new was stamped beneath Daniel's. Sole point of contact. Sole beneficiary, authorized to make unilateral changes. Agnes's fingers hovered above the keyboard. "I never signed that," she murmured. "Of course you didn't," Inez said. "You've managed the premiums yourself since 2008. She scrolled to the signature page. Sure enough, there it was. Agnes Holloway, tight, slanted, and unmistakably forged. Agnes stared at it like it was a fake passport, like someone had worn her skin without permission. Inez leaned back. "It's time." "For what?" "For a real lawyer, not just collecting receipts in a binder like it's tax season. You need someone who can hit back." She reached across the table and grabbed Agnes's phone. "You still got Gordon Hale in here?" Agnes nodded. Inez dialed. Gordon Hale answered on the second ring. His voice was warm, but no nonsense. Like someone who'd spent 30 years defusing family time bombs before they made it to court. "Agnes, it's been a while." "I need you," she said simply. "Not later. Now." 10 minutes later, she had a Tuesday morning appointment. He didn't ask questions. He didn't need to. People only called Gordon when the storm had already started. Meanwhile, Maya sat in her apartment with headphones on, hunched over a hard drive like it contained classified evidence, which, in a way, it did. The door video was now saved on 3 external drives, 2 cloud backups, and 1 microSD card hidden inside a vitamin bottle. She added encrypted voice notes, recordings of Agnes walking through each transfer, each forged signature, each lie, just in case. Maya's text came through at 5:07 p.m. "Everything's backed up, even if they torch the house. We're covered," Agnes responded with a simple thumbs up. Then she picked up her red ledger. Inside a small accordion folder marked Insurance, LHP, she pulled out payment receipts, auto debits, money orders, handwritten notes logged with exact dates and amounts. She gathered it all, photocopied them in triplicate, and began stacking each piece into a new folder labeled in Sharpie, Hale, Initial Evidence Packet. By the time she finished, the sun had dipped behind the trees, leaving the room in that bruised navy blue shadow that only happens in October. Quiet, cold, expectant. She clicked her desk lamp on. Yellow light spilled across the table. Her phone buzzed again. Caller ID, Madison LHP Compliance. She didn't answer yet. She let it ring. Then she clicked record on her second phone, and then she picked up. The sky had cleared by Tuesday afternoon, but the ground was still soft from the previous night's rain. Agnes's boots pressed deep into the half-muddied driveway as she walked up to the house on Westbridge. Her name still half-faded on the mailbox. The paint peeling around it like the rest of the place had started to forget her. The contractor was already there, clipboard in hand, hard hat tilted back like a man who thought authority came with a tool belt. "Morning, Mrs. Holloway," he called out. "We're just finishing up the kitchen tear-out." Agnes stopped short. "No one authorized a tear-out." He lifted the clipboard and waved a set of stapled pages at her. "We've got approval right here, emailed last week, signature scanned and attached." Her eyes narrowed. "Let me see it." He hesitated, but handed it over. Agnes took the pages slowly, her fingers steady even as her stomach turned. The scan was high resolution but imperfect. Her supposed signature sat at the bottom of the document, clean and slightly askew. But the ink tone didn't match the document header. The descender on the G in her last name cut off abruptly, like it had been dragged from a JPG file and dropped into place. She tilted the page. "Where's the original?" "Wasn't one," the man said, scratching the back of his neck. "Came in as a PDF from the husband's email. Looked official. He said you were out of town." A car door slammed behind them. Gordon Hale emerged, charcoal suit rumpled from the drive, briefcase in one hand, expression unreadable. Agnes handed the clipboard to him wordlessly. Gordon skimmed the document, then pulled a small folder from his case. Inside, the certified insurance packet, a printout of Agnes's notarized statement from that morning, and a drafted order. He turned to the contractor. "This is a legal notice of temporary work suspension," he said calmly. "Effective immediately, pending verification of signature and authority. I've got crews coming in this afternoon." "You'll send them home," Gordon said. "Or we'll file for injunctive relief by 3 p.m. Your choice?" The man took a half step back, not in fear, just calculation. At that moment, the side gate creaked open, and Renee appeared, sunglasses perched atop her head like a crown. She was already speaking before she cleared the fence. "Oh, please," she scoffed, voice loud enough to carry. "You're not seriously falling for this little drama act, are you?" A few of the contractors turned. So did a pair of curious neighbors on a nearby porch. Renee marched forward, eyes blazing. This entire remodel was approved months ago. If she's now pretending she didn't know— "I'm not pretending anything," Agnes said. "You're obstructing progress on your own home. Then stop trying to build it on forgery." Renee's jaw tightened. "You always were theatrical." Agnes smiled, thin and sharp. "You always were sloppy." The tension settled like dust. The contractor stood between them, visibly uncomfortable, while Gordon kept his gaze fixed on the paper in his hand. "I'm not signing anything further today," Agnes said clearly. "And until the court sorts the documents, no additional work is authorized." Renee turned to the crew. "You all hear that? She's making it personal, delaying everything, just so she can, feel powerful for a minute?" No one responded. That silence was louder than any insult. Back at Inez's that evening, the living room smelled like coffee and toner. Agnes sat on the couch, reviewing a fresh stack of printed emails. Inez stood nearby, pen in hand, writing carefully on a lined sheet of paper. When she was done, she slid it across the table. "I swear under penalty of perjury," it read, "that Agnes Holloway never discussed, approved, or authorized any change order pertaining to construction at the Westbridge property on or after June 1st. Signed, dated, witnessed." Agnes stared at the line of ink, then folded the statement and slipped it into a labeled pocket inside the evidence binder. She didn't look relieved. She looked ready. Her phone buzzed again. This time, a voicemail from an unknown number. She hit play. "Ms. Holloway," a male voice said, calm and practiced. "This is Detective Louise Stanton with the Financial Crimes Unit. We'd like to speak with you regarding a recent activity alert tied to multiple accounts in your name." A pause. "If you could return the call by end of day, we'd appreciate your cooperation." The message ended. Agnes set the phone down on the table, slowly. Then she looked at Inez. "They're not the only ones who've been watching." The conference room smelled like varnished wood and old secrets, thick with the quiet authority of a place where lives had been divided, protected, or erased with a single stroke of a pen. Agnes sat at the end of the long mahogany table, a glass of untouched water by her elbow and a worn file folder in front of her. Gordon Hale adjusted his reading glasses and tapped his pen against the latest draft of the revised will. Everything you requested is here. We've removed Renee Holloway from any and all beneficiary designations. She has no legal claim now, not on the estate, not on the policies, not on the trust. Agnes didn't blink. Good. And Maya? Gordon nodded. Named primary heir, but contingent on the educational clause you specified. She'll receive full disbursement after completion of an accredited degree or equivalent vocational certification. Until then, the assets are held in a structured spendthrift trust, protected from interference, predators, and especially family. Inez let out a low whistle from her seat beside the notary desk. Now that's how you build a fortress. Agnes flipped to the final page, scanning each clause with deliberate care. The house, held in trust for a minimum of 5 years, Gordon replied. It can't be sold to immediate family without written approval from the acting trustee, currently me. That language is ironclad. Even if Daniel or Renee try to claim hardship, they won't get within 100 yards of it. She tapped her pen on the paper, considering. Include the garage and any adjacent lots. I want the boundary lines unambiguous. He made the note. A clerk entered quietly, placed 2 embossed copies on the table, and exited just as quickly. No drama, no noise, just the cold paperwork of permanence. Inez moved first, stepping up to the head of the table. She signed with a slow, practiced hand beneath the witness line. Gordon followed, stamping and initialing each page before sliding the stack toward the notary. The woman flipped her ledger open, confirmed ID, and notarized each copy with crisp efficiency. The sound of the final seal pressing into paper felt louder than it should have, like something final had happened, like a door had shut without needing to be slammed. Agnes didn't say anything at first. She just watched the fresh copies cool on the table, the blue ink still slightly wet in spots. She reached for one and slid it into a sealed envelope marked Will, Final Copy A, and handed it to Gordon. Hold this one in your safe. Then she picked up the second and placed it in a flat black folder, along with a set of property deeds and medical proxy forms. That folder went into her tote, which she carried without ceremony. Gordon raised an eyebrow. And the original? I'm lodging it at the county office this afternoon, Agnes said. And I've scheduled a safety deposit box at First Jefferson. She stood and adjusted her scarf. Politeness is public, she said, almost to herself. But permanence is private. Gordon smiled, but Inez just stared at her like she was seeing something new. Someone sharper, harder edged, less inclined to explain herself. A soft knock came at the door. Maya stepped in, eyes flicking nervously from Agnes to the folder in her hands. You done? Agnes nodded. We are. Gordon passed Maya a certified envelope. Your copy, for your records. Keep it safe. Maya took it, hands slightly trembling, then looked at Agnes. So, this means if anything happens. It means, Agnes said gently, you're protected. Maya blinked fast. Then, without warning, she stepped forward and wrapped her arms tightly around Agnes. It wasn't theatrical. It wasn't dramatic. It was the kind of hug that says, thank you for seeing me when they never did. Agnes didn't hug back immediately, but when she did, her hand pressed against Maya's back with something almost maternal. Almost. Back in her car, Agnes placed the sealed county copy in the passenger seat, buckled it in, and started the engine. Her phone buzzed with a new message. Unknown number. We need to meet. She's not working alone. Attached. A blurry image from a security camera. The figure wasn't Renee, it was Daniel. Leaning over a printer, feeding a document into the scanner. Time stamped August 3rd, 2:12 a.m. Agnes stared at the screen for a long moment. Then she whispered, Got you. The summons arrived on a Thursday, delivered not by a sheriff or courier, but by a hired process server in jeans and a windbreaker, who handed Agnes the envelope like it was junk mail. Are you Ms. Agnes Holloway? He asked flatly. She nodded. You've been served. He turned and left before she even opened it. She waited until she was inside. standing at her kitchen counter under the flickering light that hadn't been replaced yet, before she slit the envelope open. Her eyes scanned the first few lines. In petition for emergency review of testamentary capacity. Renee Holloway petitioner, allegations, undue influence, cognitive decline, and impulsive asset transfers. Agnes let out a breath, not surprise, just disgust. She placed the packet flat on the counter, then dialed Gordon. She's going for mental incompetency, Agnes said. I'll start drafting our brief, Gordon replied. Get me a full witness list. Anyone who can attest to your state of mind. She's playing for time, Agnes muttered. If she can delay the probate or tie up the trust, she thinks I'll fold. She's underestimating how fast we can move. By Friday, Gordon had scheduled a private competency evaluation with a state-licensed forensic psychologist. Neutral, court-recognized. The appointment was set for Monday morning. Agnes was already building her witness bench. Inez would testify, of course. Her statement had already been notarized. But Agnes added more, Maya, for one. She'd been with Agnes through the insurance rewrite and asset transfers. She'd seen the logic, the planning, the clarity. Then Agnes called Sharon Lindell, a senior bank clerk at Jefferson Savings who'd handled her accounts for years. Sharon's voice was warm but firm. She's trying to claim you've been impulsive, Sharon said. Agnes, I've watched you review your monthly statements with a ruler. Your handwriting hasn't changed since the Clinton administration, Agnes chuckled. That's exactly the kind of detail I need. Sharon agreed to appear via affidavit and Zoom testimony. That night, Agnes pulled out the black metal file cabinet from the hall closet. She opened each drawer, one by one. Receipts, contracts, tax returns. Warranty stubs from a fridge she no longer owned. She stacked everything chronologically, using Inez's system of colored tabs. Red for property, blue for insurance, green for loans, yellow for Daniel and Renee, her private wildfire file. When Maya arrived later with Thai takeout and a USB stick, she found Agnes surrounded by binders, highlighters, and an open ledger on the floor. Are we prepping for court or tax season? Maya joked, though her eyes were tight with worry. Both, Agnes replied, because she's not going to just fight dirty, she's going to lie. Saturday afternoon, Inez met with 3 of the neighborhood elders who'd known Agnes for over 2 decades. Retired couples, quiet solo homeowners, people who'd borrowed folding tables from her garage and called her every November for pie recipes. By sunset, Inez had 5 written attestations signed and witnessed, all stating the same thing. Agnes Holloway maintained full mental clarity, lived independently, and demonstrated sound reasoning in all financial and household matters as recently as this month. Neighborhood loyalty still means something, Inez said, placing the statements in Agnes's evidence binder. Even in a world run by lawyers, Agnes looked at the stack, then at Inez. She really thinks I'll fall apart in court. Inez's face hardened. Let her think it. Sunday evening, Gordon's brief was ready. 36 pages long, tightly packed with transaction logs, emails, notarized documents, and a full timeline of events, including the video Renee never knew existed. Attached at the end, the security camera still of Daniel at the printer. This alone won't win us the war, Gordon had warned, but it'll poison their credibility before they get through the front door. Agnes didn't sleep that night. She didn't need to. By Monday morning, she arrived at the courthouse early, hair pinned up, blazer pressed, folder in hand. She looked like a woman attending a meeting she had already won. The judge, a wiry woman with silver hair and a courtroom reputation for speed, reviewed Gordon's filing, scanned Renee's petition, and lifted an eyebrow. Unsubstantiated, potentially retaliatory, she muttered, more to herself than anyone else. Then aloud, I'll allow a competency hearing, but on an expedited calendar, 1 week from today. Her gavel struck the wood. The sound echoed like a countdown. Outside the courthouse, Renee stood with Daniel by the parking meter, sunglasses on despite the cloudy sky. She watched Agnes walk past with Maya and Gordon in lockstep. Agnes didn't acknowledge them, but Daniel spoke anyway. You won't win, he said, quiet, almost amused. Agnes stopped, turned just enough to look him in the eye. I don't need to win, she said. I just need you exposed. The email went out at 8:12 a.m. on a Tuesday. Subject line: Account action notification. Immediate attention required. By 8:26, Daniel's phone was buzzing in his palm, his thumb already swiping through the message. Account access limited. Internal hold placed per counsel request. All non-essential transfers paused. Line of credit suspended. Scheduled outgoing ACH payments flagged. He barely finished reading when a contractor texted him. 2 checks bounced. Do we need to pause demo? And then another. Team walked off until payments clear. Need direction. Daniel stood in the parking lot outside his firm's office, jaw locked, fingers tightening around his phone like he wanted to crush it. Inside their newly rented Range Rover, Renee was already scrolling social media, sunglasses perched on her head like a tiara of delusion. She froze the accounts, Daniel snapped. Tossing the phone onto the dashboard, Renee didn't look up. So unfreeze them. I can't unfreeze them. They're under court scrutiny now. Probate hold, internal audit. Her lawyer locked us down tighter than a drum. Now she looked up. She's really dragging this into court? Over what? A remodel? No, Daniel muttered. Over everything. That afternoon, Renee made her first mistake. She posted a passive-aggressive update to her public-facing lifestyle blog, nestled between throwback pumpkin bread recipes and photos of their cozy but ambitious fixer-upper. When a parent lashes out, it's not about the kitchen or the carpet, it's about control. Unfortunately, some people make legal drama their final act of relevance. The post was meant for sympathy. What she got instead was silence, and a few uncomfortable unfollows from neighbors who'd already seen Agnes on her morning walks, talking calmly, ledger in hand, flanked by Maya and Inez like a small army of decency. One neighbor, Mr. Barta, quietly emailed Gordon a sworn affidavit. I have witnessed Mrs. Holloway handling her affairs with clarity, independence, and a quiet dignity. The idea that she has lost her faculties is absurd. Another neighbor, Mrs. Lynn, submitted hers 2 hours later. Agnes helped me draft my mother's will last year, sharp as ever. Don't let them turn this into one of those ugly family fights where the liars win. By week's end, Gordon had 9 supporting affidavits from people who'd known Agnes longer than Renee had known how to drive. Meanwhile, Agnes filed her own motion. Not just a counterclaim, this was a formal financial coercion complaint with attached exhibits. The forged change order, insurance fraud alerts, suspicious transactions through Daniel's company. It wasn't performative, it was prosecutorial. Gordon filed it that Friday mid-morning, directly into the judge's electronic queue. By 3:45 p.m., they received a docket entry confirming review for evidentiary hearing within the next 10 business days. You just turned their attack into discovery fuel, Gordon told Agnes as he tucked the stamped documents into her binder. They'll hate how clean this gets. That night, Maya sat cross-legged on her apartment floor, headphones on, uploading the doorway video to a secure cloud folder for counsel access. She gave it a new label, RH, Entrance, Denial, Vid, 12U09. And under it, a subfolder with other voice memos, quiet, reflective recordings she'd made of Agnes walking through the story piece by piece. No embellishment, no revenge fantasy, just receipts, just facts. Maya had lived in enough chaos to know that truth needed backup. 3 drives, 2 clouds, and 1 printed transcript later, she texted Gordon. You've got full access to everything, no password needed, just protect her. At Gordon's office, the subpoenas were ready by Monday. Email logs, device data, and all digital correspondence between Daniel's company and the contractor Renee had used for the house remodel. He had timed it to hit just as the contractor's legal team started requesting indemnification language. The subpoena didn't just request, they commanded. No one's loyalty lasts when money stops moving, Gordon said quietly to Agnes. Let's see how long their contractors stay silent when they realize perjury's on the table. Agnes didn't respond right away. She was watching rain bead down the conference room window, slow and cold. Then she said, I don't want them ruined. Gordon turned. I want them documented. That night, Renee stood in their unfinished living room, drywall exposed and wires hanging from open beams, holding her phone like it was on fire. Daniel stood behind her, pale. They froze everything, she hissed. I can't even pay the property taxes without her signature now. Daniel was quiet, too quiet. Then he turned toward her and said the one thing she wasn't prepared for. She was smarter than we thought. The forensic accountant's name was Sherry Klein, retired IRS, now working out of a converted barn near Albany with a pit bull named Stan, and 3 locked filing cabinets she never opened in front of clients. She greeted Gordon and Agnes with no handshake, just a nod and a clipboard. You said you had suspicions, she began. I don't chase vibes, I chase numbers. Agnes set a flash drive on the table. Then start here. By Thursday, Sherry had built a working chart, color-coded, cross-referenced, and annotated like a legal autopsy. This, she said, tapping her pen against a spreadsheet projected on the wall, is what I call a microtrail. Small transfers, rounded amounts, most under $1,000, small enough to fly under most compliance triggers. But they repeat. Agnes stepped closer. There, in neat rows, was a pattern. $832.94. DCH Services, LLC. $903.12. DCH Services, LLC. $640.50. Routed via ACH. Labeled Consulting. Each tied to a bank account technically owned by Daniel's business. But the routing path led further, into subcontractor invoices, Home Depot orders, even one luxury staging consultation billed directly to a vendor under a memo, charged to Mom's account. Agnes stared at the phrase as though it had been tattooed onto her retinas. Sherry wasn't done. And this? She pulled up a printout of an email string. This is what makes it actionable. The email was from Renee to a staging company in White Plains. The tone was breezy, friendly, faux professional. Hey, go ahead and process the full install. Just use Mom's account like last time. Same card ending in 31. She doesn't track the itemized ones anyway. I'll cover the diff after closing. Agnes's throat went dry, but her face didn't change. She simply picked up the paper and placed it into her folder. The police weren't loud about it, but they moved. By Monday afternoon, a preliminary case file had been opened through the Elder Financial Protection Division, an interagency team under the state's Financial Crimes Unit. Not a full prosecution, not yet. But it was real. A detective named Stanton, same voice from the earlier voicemail, called Gordon personally. We're not coming in with sirens, he said, but we're watching, and if anything gets deleted, it's obstruction. Renee received her notice the next morning. She responded with a short, self-authored statement, denying any wrongdoing and refusing to turn over Daniel's business records, citing pending civil litigation and privacy rights under contractual agreements. The response arrived in Gordon's inbox flagged as formal, but the tone read like tantrum. Agnes didn't react. She didn't call, didn't comment, didn't gloat. Instead, she went to First Jefferson, sat across from a banker she'd known since Maya was in braces, and quietly initiated a transfer of a portion of her liquid assets, just over $128,000, into an irrevocable protection account. She named Gordon trustee. It's not to keep it from them, she said, her voice steady. It's to keep it from being used. The banker didn't ask questions. He just nodded, slid over the forms, and initialed every page. The money was moved by Cobb. No one could touch it now, not even Agnes. That too was the point. At home, Maya worked late. She wore sweats and fuzzy socks and had surrounded herself with 3 mugs of different tea she hadn't finished. On her screen, folders labeled with brutal precision. Bank. Auth logs, email, RH, Dec, Renee, calls, voicemails. Every file had a timestamp. Every image had metadata. Every PDF was hyperlinked to the original receipt or email thread. She wasn't archiving, she was arming. One folder was password protected. Inside it, the video, the screenshots. A growing number of voice memos. One was new. Maya hit play. It was Agnes, earlier that afternoon, her voice calm and clipped. This isn't about revenge. This is about prevention. They used my silence like it was weakness. I won't let them do it to anyone else. Maya exhaled and hit save. That night, Agnes stepped onto her back porch. The wind was sharper now, the kind that hinted at winter without saying it outright. She pulled her shawl tighter and stared at the stars. One flickered, then vanished behind cloud. Her phone buzzed. Another message. This one anonymous. Just 2 words. Check mailbox. She turned, walked down the front steps, opened the cold metal door. Inside was a single manila envelope. No return address. She carried it inside, shut the door, and peeled it open. Inside, a printed photo. Daniel. In an office. Hands on Renee's laptop. A folder open on the screen labeled Trust Documents. Modified drafts. Time stamped 2 weeks before the will rewrite. Agnes stared at the image for a long, silent minute. Then she whispered, "One of them's leaking." The courtroom was colder than it needed to be. Architecturally neutral, designed to wear people down. Pale wood benches, thin carpet. No windows. Still, every seat was full. Neighbors, reporters, a few retirees from the bridge group who hadn't picked sides but came anyway. Agnes walked in through the double doors like someone who'd spent a lifetime being underestimated. Her shoes were plain. Her cardigan was blue, but in her hands, an indexed binder, tabs in yellow, pink, and orange. She placed it on the petitioner's table with a controlled exhale, like setting down the final piece of a personal reckoning. Gordon sat beside her, dark suit and wire-rimmed glasses catching the fluorescence in strange angles. He leaned over. Last chance to feel nervous. Agnes didn't look at him. Too late for that. I already felt everything. Across the aisle, Renee wore courtroom beige like it was a costume someone forced her into. She sat stiffly next to her attorney, a man who looked more annoyed than concerned. Daniel was missing, allegedly sick. No one believed it. The judge entered, Honorable Lenora Jacobs. Known for patience thinner than her eyebrows, and a penchant for peppermints she never offered anyone else. They began with filings, bank documents, email headers, not the juicy parts yet, just the scaffolding. Then came Sherry Klein's forensic audit, her affidavit presented under sworn notarization, detailing the microtrail of rounded transfers and forged memos. Gordon walked the court through the highlights with clipped clarity, referencing exhibit numbers and dates, with the ease of a man who knew what mattered most wasn't volume. It was clarity. Next came the contractor affidavit, the one who'd done the consulting work on a property that never closed. His voice came in via pre-recorded video. I was paid under DCH services, but the checks came from someone called Renee Hollis. I was told to keep receipts vague. My mistake. Gordon dropped the final log on the stack, a file containing transaction dates, IP addresses, and 5 invoice headers signed under a proxy Agnes had never authorized. Agnes didn't flinch, but Renee, she shifted, crossed her arms, bit her lip too hard. Then came the audio. Maya had compressed the file, cleaned the background, filtered for clarity. It played through a small courtroom speaker, but it might as well have been thunder. Renee's voice, unmistakable. She doesn't even open her own statements. I mean, if she notices, I'll just cry about tuition or something. She always folds. All she has is guilt. Then, quieter, meaner. She should be grateful. She doesn't need the money. We do, and she gets the pity points. And finally, the one that made the gallery gasp. If she pushes this, I'll beg. That always works. She can't stand conflict, and she hates when people think she's cruel. The speaker clicked off. Silence thickened. Judge Jacobs adjusted her glasses and cleared her throat. Her ruling came with no pause. Under the authority of this court, and in accordance with the Elder Financial Protection Act, I hereby order full restitution to be calculated by forensic audit and returned to Ms. Agnes Merritt within 30 days. All unauthorized withdrawals are voided retroactively. Furthermore, she paused to glance at Renee's table. Daniel Hollis and Renee Hollis are permanently barred from access to any accounts, assets, or financial vehicles belonging to Ms. Merritt, effective immediately. A ripple moved through the room, the kind that doesn't make noise but still shifts everything. Reporters scrambled out. Someone whispered, "Landmark ruling." Someone else said, "Text Channel 8." Gordon smiled once, small and tired. Agnes didn't. She stood slowly, collected her binder, smoothed her cardigan like she'd just left a dentist appointment, not a courtroom. No high fives, no tears, just quiet dignity, folded and carried like a shawl. Outside, the courthouse steps were a mosaic of news vans and curious onlookers. Agnes bypassed them all. She walked down the side ramp where the cameras didn't aim and disappeared into Gordon's waiting car. Inside, she finally spoke. "That's done," Gordon nodded. "It was justice." "No," she said, eyes fixed ahead. "It was paperwork. Justice still has a name." She reached into her purse and pulled out the envelope again, the one from the mailbox, flattened the photo. Daniel, Renee's laptop. Trust documents, modified drafts. And now, something she hadn't seen before. A reflection in the glass behind him. A blurred figure, not Renee, someone else. She handed the photo to Gordon. "Zoom in." He frowned. "On what?" Her voice was razor-wire calm. "The traitor." The envelope was barely cold before the pushback began. By Thursday, a motion landed on Gordon's desk, thick, over-labeled, and smug in tone. Filed on behalf of Renee Hollis by a boutique litigation firm out of Westchester with more ambition than ethics. The claim? Undue influence. That Agnes had been coached, manipulated, and mentally swayed into updating her trust, creating a structure that unfairly excluded her biological children. It was aggressive, not because it had merit, but because it had timing. Gordon read it in silence, then slid it across his desk with a sigh like an exhale through grit. Agnes, seated across from him in a green scarf and a look that had grown sharper these past few weeks, didn't even blink. "She's not trying to win," she said. "She's trying to smear." Gordon nodded. "Stall, exhaust, cast doubt. Doesn't matter if the argument sticks. It's about perception now." Agnes tilted her head. "Then let's make it backfire." He opened his laptop, fingers already moving. "We'll update the trust again. Not the core terms, just the language. Bulletproof it." Over the next 2 days, Gordon redrafted every clause like it was battle strategy, cleaned up the trustee authorities, inserted a no-contest clause with surgical clarity. Any beneficiary who challenged the trust in court would forfeit all future claims. The message was subtle, but final. And public sympathy? It was already shifting. The press had picked up the ruling from the hearing, calling it a bellwether moment in elder fraud litigation. Editorials cropped up on regional news sites. Letters to the editor framed Agnes as both victim and survivor. Her quiet resolve had made her a symbol of a different kind of strength. The kind that doesn't announce itself, but leaves marks anyway. Renee's counterclaim only fueled the shift. Undue influence didn't play well against a woman who still walked her own groceries in and organized her pills alphabetically by manufacturer. Agnes didn't post, she didn't grant interviews, but other people did. It started with Inez. She knocked on Agnes's door one morning with a Tupperware full of lemon bars and a handwritten note in blocky cursive. "I'm testifying if it goes to court again. Don't argue." Agnes opened her mouth. Inez held up a hand. "I've lived next door for 14 years. I know your voice. I know your laugh. And I know when you started walking slower, not thinking slower." That afternoon, Maya created a spreadsheet. Witness log, readiness. Names, contact info, availability, notes on relevant anecdotes. There were 11 entries by dinner time. By Monday, 17. One woman remembered how Agnes caught an HOA president padding invoices 3 years ago. Another had been at the same bank branch the day Agnes froze her assets. A retired nurse offered to attest that Agnes still balanced her own medication log by hand, something most people half her age didn't do. They weren't just character witnesses, they were data points in human form. Gordon compiled affidavits, attached supplemental testimony, and preemptively filed a motion to dismiss the counterclaim as frivolous and in apparent bad faith. The court agreed to hear it. But not without a warning. At the pre-hearing, Judge Jacobs didn't hide her distaste. "We don't weaponize the court system to relitigate hurt feelings," she said flatly. "If it becomes evident this motion was filed in bad faith, sanctions will be on the table." Renee's attorney, young, taut, and suddenly less smug, nodded too quickly. Outside, Gordon and Agnes stepped onto the courthouse sidewalk, flanked by early fall sunlight and the smell of vendor hot dogs from a block over. Maya approached with her laptop tucked under one arm and her phone already buzzing with updates. 4 more said yes, she said. Mrs. DeLuca, Ron from Card Night. And the guy who ran the book club you quit after they added that MLM lady. Agnes cracked a smile. God, she was insufferable. Maya smirked. Yeah, but she'll still probably say you're of sound mind. Agnes looked out across the street. Her reflection ghosted in the courthouse glass. Solid, still, real. Let her come, she said. Let her bring her claims and her fiction. She started walking, steady and deliberate. But next time, I want to see her eyes when it breaks. Maya blinked. When what breaks? Agnes didn't answer. Because just then, her phone buzzed. No contact, no preview, just one word on the lock screen. Friday, she stared at it. Then slowly turned the screen to show Gordon. Whoever's leaking, she said, voice like coiled thread. Just picked a side. The file showed up like a late-stage plot twist. Buried in a response packet, Renee's counsel filed under a neutral title, clarifying property transfers. Inside, among the boilerplate forms and dated appraisals, was a quitclaim deed, one Agnes had allegedly signed 2 years ago, transferring partial ownership of her cottage to D.H. Holdings, a shell company with Daniel's initials baked into the ink. It looked official. The font was right, the notary stamp real, the signature? Familiar, too familiar. But Maya flagged it before the end of the day. It's the metadata, she said, standing behind Gordon's desk, laptop open. Look at the timestamps. The document says it was signed in 2021, but the digital file shows it was created 7 weeks ago, on a machine registered to a Renee Hollis MacBook. Gordon adjusted his glasses. Please tell me you made a backup before opening it. Maya scoffed. 3, plus an offline copy. I learned from watching you. The next morning, Gordon filed an emergency evidentiary motion, accusing Renee's team of submitting a potentially forged deed. The language was sharp but surgical. Words like incongruent metadata, backdated creation, intent to deceive. A motion for sanctions followed. Attached, a full forensic report, timestamp analysis, and screenshots of the document's origin path. Court convened by Friday. The same Friday. Renee's attorney opened with forced confidence but stumbled by paragraph 2 when Judge Jacobs asked, "Do you have any version of this document dated before June of this year?" He froze. "No, Your Honor, but we were under the impression the paper version." "The paper version," the judge cut in, "does not undo digital fingerprints." She didn't rule immediately, but her face said plenty. What followed was procedural chaos. Gordon, calm and coiled, requested the court invalidate any property transfers in dispute and restrict the parties from executing any new transactions involving Agnes's estate without explicit judicial review. Renee's counsel objected, loudly. The gallery didn't flinch. They were watching something else now, a credibility implosion in slow motion. That evening, Agnes met Gordon at his office. The blinds were closed. A takeout bag sat untouched on the side table. She slid a new amendment across his desk. He read it once, then again, slower. "You're sure?" he asked. "I don't want a single disputed dollar going to them. Not even if they win on appeal. Not even if I'm dead." He exhaled, pushed his chair back, and retrieved the witness forms. The amendment stated that if any part of the trust was legally overturned, through litigation, settlement, or loophole, the contested amount would bypass all heirs and lands squarely in the account of Silvernet, a local nonprofit that specialized in legal and financial aid for at-risk seniors. The irony was brutal. The point wasn't. By Monday, word got out. The Silvernet board issued a public statement thanking Agnes for her courage and pledging to expand services using any future proceeds made available. They didn't name Renee. They didn't need to. The press picked up the quote. Then came the donations. Small at first, $20, $50, $100, from strangers who wrote things like "For Agnes," or "My mom went through something similar." A widow from Schroon Lake mailed in a handwritten note with a check for $500. A retired accountant offered free services for the rest of the year. Gordon's legal fund crossed into surplus territory. And then, Nora posted the timeline. It wasn't flashy, just a clean carousel of side-by-side screenshots, the deed metadata, the email that introduced it, the trust clauses, and the court filing dates. She kept the captions neutral, factual, crisp, but it hit like a scalpel. By Tuesday morning, the Post had 2,300 shares, half from neighborhood Facebook groups and local forums. One comment read, "This isn't a family fight. It's a case study." Renee's silence grew louder. Maya sat beside Agnes on the back porch that night, each sipping tea that had long gone cold. "They're unraveling," Maya said. "They were always unraveling," Agnes replied. "They just didn't notice the thread." Just then, Maya's phone buzzed. A notification. Encrypted server drop, no subject line, just a file. She tapped it open. Inside, a screen recording. A cursor moved across a desktop, opened a folder labeled Trust Drafts Final, and then hovered on a subfolder, Backups, Daniel. Maya's fingers froze. Her voice went tight. "Who has this?" Agnes leaned forward. "Play it again." Because if someone had backups Daniel never shared, they weren't just leaking. They were inside. The apology arrived 3 days after the judgment, typed, not handwritten, printed on stationery that still smelled faintly of a lawyer's office. It came in an envelope with no return address, but a traceable postmark. Westchester County Jail. Agnes set it on the kitchen table and stared at it for a long minute before opening it. Inside, Daniel's words unfolded in careful, hesitant lines. "Mom, I don't expect forgiveness. I just want to say I'm sorry for the way I let things go, for not stopping her when I could have. You trusted me, and I mistook that for permission. I'm getting help now. I know I lost more than money." He'd signed his full name at the bottom, as if remembering formality might somehow redeem him. Agnes read it twice, then once more, slower, her eyes catching on the part about help. She believed he was sorry, in the way people are sorry when the cost comes due. But she also knew sorrow didn't rebuild trust. It only explained its ruin. She folded the letter, slid it into an envelope marked "Kept for Record," and placed it in the bottom drawer of her desk. That afternoon, she drove to Gordon's office without calling first. He was mid-conference when she walked in, binder tucked under her arm like a weapon she no longer needed but still respected. "I need another amendment," she said simply. He paused. "To what end?" "Closure," she said. Then, after a beat, "and consequence." The final amendment was short, 3 paragraphs, measured in absolute. It stated that any immediate family member convicted of or found to have exploited the settler, financially, emotionally, or by coercion, would be permanently disinherited. Their forfeited portion would be diverted by default to 2 beneficiaries: the SilverNet Foundation and a new educational trust established in Nora's name. "No appeals," Agnes said as Gordon reviewed the draft. "No loopholes. If they ever think to try again, they'll know exactly what it costs." Gordon met her gaze. "You're certain?" "I'm old," she said softly. "Not uncertain." The amendment went before the court the following week. Judge Jacobs presided again. Her expression unreadable, but her respect unmistakable. The proceeding was brief, procedural, but when the gavel dropped, the judgment felt heavier than sound. It felt like the closing of a door. "Approved," Jacobs said. "The court finds this amendment consistent with both law and justice. Enforcement effective immediately." By the next month, the restitution checks began to arrive. First from escrow, then from accounts frozen mid-transfer, then from property sales. Renee had tried to quietly arrange before her bar suspension took effect. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. The money she'd siphoned through deceit now returned through court order, re-stamped, relabeled, and untouchable by her own hands. Agnes didn't frame the checks or celebrate their arrival. She deposited each one with silent efficiency, transferring the funds into SilverNet and Nora's trust according to the amendment's terms. When a reporter asked for a quote, she gave only 6 words: "I won't teach them to take." By the following week, it was printed on T-shirts at a local fundraiser. Renee's professional world, once polished and insular, began to collapse from within. Clients withdrew, partners distanced themselves. Her license review board announced an ethics inquiry. For the first time, her name in print didn't come with applause. It came with footnotes. Meanwhile, Nora came home from college that weekend, a duffel slung over her shoulder and cautious eyes on her grandmother's face. "Are you okay?" she asked. Agnes smiled faintly. better than I've been in years." That night, Inez hosted another dinner, smaller this time. Just them, Gordon and Maya. The living room glowed with candlelight and the low hum of something almost like peace. Maya scrolled through her phone again, showing Nora the new Silvernet page, the Trust's official launch announcement, already shared hundreds of times. "You did this," Maya said. Agnes shook her head. "We undid something. That's harder." Later, when everyone had gone home and the dishes were stacked to dry, Agnes sat on her porch with Inez beside her. The air smelled faintly of rain, the kind that hadn't arrived yet but was making promises. "You ever think about forgiving them?" Inez asked quietly. Agnes looked out toward the dark edge of her yard. "Forgiveness is for people who stop taking," she said. "They haven't stopped." Inez nodded, saying nothing more. Inside, Agnes's phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. A new email notification lit the screen. Subject: Our Silvernet Funds Transfer Confirmation. Sender: nuern.holliscdchservicesarchive.com. The address was inactive, should have been deleted months ago, and attached below the subject line, one encrypted file. She stood in the doorway, watching the light from the phone pulse once, then fade. Her voice, low and certain, filled the quiet. Then it isn't over after all. The courtroom air felt taut that morning, like static before a lightning strike. Reporters lined the back rows. The bailiff had warned them, no flash photography, but the glow of phone cameras still shimmered in the corners. Renee was sworn in just after 10. Her lawyer's tie was too tight, his eyes too darting. They'd prepped her for days, maybe weeks, but preparation can't rewire panic. She adjusted the microphone. "I'm here because I want the truth out," she began, voice shaking. "My mother wasn't fully aware of what she was signing when she—" Gordon rose. "Objection, calls for speculation." "Sustained," Judge Jacobs said, with the tone of someone who'd been through this too many times to be impressed by performance. Renee cleared her throat. "What I mean is, she was under stress. I was helping with finances, but Gordon, Mr. Talbot, pressured her into transferring assets." A murmur rolled through the gallery. Gordon said nothing. He didn't need to. The exhibit monitor did it for him. He clicked one key. Up came an email thread, projected large enough to fill the wall. Dated June 3, 2022, Renee to Daniel. Got Mom to sign the amended account forms. Use the old notary stamp. She won't notice. Just move the funds before Monday. G won't trace it if we route it through the subcontractor. The silence that followed wasn't surprise. It was recognition. The proof had been sitting there all along, waiting for her to contradict herself. Judge Jacobs leaned forward. "Ms. Hollis, are you stating under oath that your mother was not aware of the documents she signed?" Renee's mouth opened, then stalled. Those emails were taken out of context." "By whom?" the judge asked. Renee's eyes darted to her attorney. He was already flipping pages, desperate for an anchor. "We believe those communications were altered." "Do you have any proof of that claim?" He didn't. And the metadata, introduced an hour earlier, already authenticated the messages as original. It was a slow unraveling from there. Each date she gave, each supposed transaction, each conversation, collapsed under the weight of receipts, bank logs, or her own prior statements. The contradictions stacked like dominoes. By the third one, Judge Jacobs stopped writing notes. By the fifth, she just watched. Finally, she said it aloud. "Your testimony is not credible, Ms. Hollis. And this court is no longer inclined to treat your submissions as made in good faith." The words landed like verdicts. Gordon stood again, papers in hand. "Your Honor, in light of these findings, we request immediate enforcement of restitution and authorization to recover any misappropriated funds, traced through DH Holdings and its related accounts." The judge didn't even hesitate. "Granted. Effective today." Renee's attorney objected, voice cracking mid-sentence. The gavel came down once, decisive, echoing. And then, from the hallway outside, camera flashes erupted like fireworks. Daniel had arrived, pale, unshaven, hands trembling as he tried to read a prepared statement. The press clustered in tight. I just want to apologize," he stammered, blinking under the glare. "To my mother, to the court." I didn't know, didn't see how far things went. Gordon, standing just behind Agnes, murmured, "You believe that?" Agnes didn't answer until Daniel looked up, directly at her, eyes glossy with the kind of regret that comes too late to spend. She spoke just loud enough for the nearest microphones to catch. "I prefer my money with people who earn it." The reporters got their soundbite. The networks got their headline. That evening, the town felt oddly lighter, a kind of collective exhale. Inez hosted a small dinner at her place, a long oak table, casseroles lined up like old friends. No speeches, no toasts, just clinking cutlery, quiet laughter, and the soft hum of something like relief. Maya sat at the corner, scrolling through her phone. Local station ran a piece, "The Merritt Case as Model of Accountability. They're quoting you." "Grandma." Agnes raised an eyebrow. "They can have the words. I'll keep the lesson." But later, when the dishes were done and the guests had gone, she lingered by the window. The night was cool, the moon low over the trees. Her phone buzzed once on the sill. A message. Unknown number. "You think it's over. No name, no punctuation." Agnes stared at the screen, then locked the phone and whispered to no one. "Then you don't know me yet." It arrived quietly, just a PDF in Gordon's inbox titled Merritt v. Hollis, Appellate Judgment Filed. No dramatic email subject, no fanfare. But Agnes knew what it meant the moment she saw the slight lift in his eyebrows. "Unanimous," Gordon said, sliding the screen around. 3-judge panel, findings upheld. No error in application of law. Your trust stands. She didn't smile exactly. Not in the way people do when they win. But something eased in her shoulders, like a spring uncoiling after too many seasons. "And the costs?" she asked. "Renee's ordered to pay them," he said. "In full. Sanctions upheld. Language is stern." Agnes nodded once, slowly, as if to say, "Let it be known." The ruling was airtight. 7 pages dissecting each of Renee's claims and dismantling them one by one. The appellate court found no evidence of bias, coercion, or procedural misstep. Every financial protection Gordon had drafted, every affidavit, every metadata timestamp, it all held. There would be no retrial, no loophole, no mercy cloaked in legalese. By the end of the week, the news had filtered through the system. The story was no longer one of scandal, but of closure. And Agnes, she didn't just walk away, she got to work. Using a portion of the restitution funds, she partnered with Silvernet to establish something entirely new: the Merritt Workshops, a traveling series that taught seniors how to protect their assets, spot financial manipulation, and establish digital literacy with modern tools. The first event was hosted at the Albany Public Library, in a conference room that still smelled faintly of copier toner and lemon-scented floor wax. 28 people showed up. Most arrived cautious, clutching purses or notepads, unsure if the event was for someone like them. But by the time Agnes stepped to the front, binder in hand, eyes clear and deliberate, every head in the room lifted. "I didn't come here to tell you my story," she began. "I came here to help you keep yours." The impact was instant, quietly seismic. Word spread quickly. Assisted living centers asking for bookings, independent banks requesting speaking guides, local news stations running short interviews. But it was one profile, published in the Sunday edition of the Albany Register, titled From Litigant to Leader, The Quiet Rise of Agnes Merritt. That shifted public memory, no longer just a fraud survivor. Agnes became something else entirely, a reference point. One quote, bolded mid-article, seemed to follow her. "No one thinks they'll need to defend their life from the people they raised. But if they ever do, I want them armed, not ashamed." Banks took notice. 2 regional institutions, First Jefferson and Battery Credit Union, quietly began internal audits of their elder account protocols. They cited recent court-influenced cases in their memos, but everyone knew what they meant. Maya stood behind Agnes as they read the article on her laptop. "You're officially more famous than I am," she teased. Agnes didn't look up. "Good. Means the story stopped being about me." Inez showed up that night with a peach pie and a bottle of cheap sparkling cider. They sat on the porch as the sun dipped low behind the trees, the air warm with the last gasp of late summer. "You realize what you've done?" Inez asked, slicing the pie. Agnes raised an eyebrow. You turned being shut out into opening doors for other people. Agnes smiled. Then maybe it wasn't a waste. They clinked cider glasses like old war generals in borrowed flutes. But inside, Maya's phone buzzed. She stepped away from the porch, into the living room, and checked the screen. One unread message. From the same encrypted relay that had sent the trust draft's final screen recording. No subject line this time, just a file. A video. She tapped it open. Daniel, leaner, paler, looking over his shoulder like someone always being followed. He sat at what looked like a hostel desk, fluorescent light buzzing overhead. If you're seeing this, it means I didn't make the deal. There's more. I didn't know how much. But it wasn't just Renee, or me. He looked off camera, breath shallow. Someone's cleaning it up now, quiet but fast. They're tying it back to Silvernet. You need to tell Agnes. The clip cut out. Abrupt, corrupted, or interrupted. Maya stared at the screen, heart kicking into a new gear. Outside, Agnes laughed, low and warm as the evening breeze. But inside, something darker had just started breathing again. Because if what Daniel said was true, this fight had only looked like the end. The invitation came from a mid-sized law school in upstate New York, polite, formal, and signed by the dean himself. They wanted Agnes to speak at their annual elder law symposium, but not as a cautionary tale, as a case study. We've never seen a personal trust document influence judicial precedent this clearly, the dean had written. You built protections we now teach. Would you consider walking our students through what you did, and why? Agnes didn't answer right away. She sat with the letter by her kitchen window, the afternoon light sliding across the tiles like it was making room for the moment. Her oxygen concentrator hissed faintly in the next room, low, steady background noise by now. Eventually, she nodded once and folded the invitation into her binder. If they're learning, she murmured, I'll teach. The symposium came and went. A standing ovation, 2 published papers, requests from 5 other universities. But Agnes kept the focus narrow, not on her, not even on the betrayal, but on infrastructure, language, boundaries written in ink before they had to be drawn in blood. The original trust, her amendments, and even the appellate rulings were now part of the semester-long course packet in family law and fiduciary ethics. She didn't smile when they told her that, but her hand did linger on the page longer than it needed to. The rest of the restitution funds were quietly moved again, this time with purpose. Half went into a new grant under Silvernet's umbrella, the Merit Aid Initiative. Its focus, seniors without family support navigating contested assets or power of attorney disputes. No fanfare. Just an auto-confirmation email and a human case manager within 24 hours of application. The other half seeded Nora's scholarship fund. Privately held, publicly accessible, and designed for students studying public interest law with a specialty in elder protection. Nora didn't know until the paperwork was finalized. You're giving this to me? She asked, stunned, staring at the documents Gordon handed her. No, Agnes corrected. I'm giving it through you, stewardship, not legacy. Nora had blinked fast and said nothing more. Daniel stayed away. A short note arrived by registered mail. No apology, no defense. Just a neutral update. He was living in a group rehab facility on the edge of Vermont, working odd jobs, paying down fines. He didn't ask for money or contact or forgiveness. He'd been legally removed from the trust 3 amendments ago. His name stayed gone. Renee was less silent. News pieces about her ethics suspension trickled in, each one quieter than the last. She tried pivoting to consulting work, but the reputation followed. It always does when the ink runs too deep to scrub. Agnes never commented. She didn't need to. The ink had always been the point. That fall, the neighbors gathered again. This time in Agnes's backyard, under soft string lights that Maya had strung through the trees, the glow catching in wine glasses and plastic forks. The picnic tables were mismatched, the food homemade, the energy gentle. Agnes sat at the head of the table, her oxygen tubing looped neatly under her nose, coiled just enough to allow full movement without making a spectacle. No one stared. It was just part of her now. Inez stood, plastic cup raised. "No begging," she said with a grin. "Just bookkeeping." Laughter bubbled up around the table, warm, relaxed. No one toasted vengeance. No one mentioned courtrooms. It was better that way. They had outlived it. Later, after the guests had trickled home and Maya was rinsing dishes in the sink, Nora slipped into the hallway and opened the floor safe beneath Agnes's bookshelf. Inside was one final binder, fresh, crisp, clearly recent. Its label in Agnes's steady handwriting, Legacy. Nora placed it carefully into the safe, closing it with a quiet click. She lingered for a second before spinning the lock shut. In the next room, Agnes breathed softly in sleep. And downstairs, the email Daniel had hinted at, the final file Maya had decrypted, rested on a flash drive labeled Keep Off Cloud. The contents were raw: audio clips, vendor contracts, tax records, and something else. A memo, dated years back. A proposed acquisition of Silvernet by a holding company quietly tied to Daniel and Renee's shell accounts. Had they planned to bleed Silvernet dry from the start? Or had that part come later? It didn't matter. They wouldn't get near it now, and Maya, watching the drive's LED blink once, understood why her grandmother had always called trust a currency, not a virtue. The final voiceover, never spoken, but written into Nora's personal journal weeks later, read like a closing argument. She locked the door and dared me to beg. I stepped back, said nothing, and later made sure she'd be the one left outside my will.